How's everybody doing? Are you buying the same installs over and over again? This can become a big issue for your online business or mobile game since CPIs or cost per install are about $1 to $5. So in today's analytics walkthrough, what I'm going to show you how to do is segment your installs better so you know which of your installs are truly brand new versus which of your installs are already known to your business, either through a device ID that you recognize or a customer or customer ID that you recognize, or potentially both. So let's go ahead and dive in and discuss this topic together. Okay, so the most important thing is with your mobile game or online business, you likely have a user acquisition team that's deploying a marketing budget to drive paid install volume to your business. Now, whenever your user acquisition team goes and purchases installs, they're doing it based on device or device ID. So for Android, that's the device advertising ID, and for iOS, that's the IDFA. Now, this creates a disconnect because once that device installs your mobile game, internally, when you analyze your data, you're typically doing it on the customer ID. And what that does is it creates a slightly complex many-to-many relationship between the device ID and the customer. So let's go ahead and focus on this matrix behind me so we can break down the total number of combinations between this many-to-many relationship. So as you can see, the first combination is a new customer, new device, right? So this is a brand new unique user with a brand new device. So device ID or IDFA. So from your point of view, this is a totally brand new customer. So the next combination we have is a new customer, but the same device, meaning your business identifies a device, but it's a new unique user. And an example of this could be a husband and wife sharing an iPad. So the husband was playing your mobile game on that iPad, and then all of a sudden on the same device, you see a new customer, and that could be the wife, right? So going down, let's look at same customer, new device. So this is very common when people upgrade their phones, buy a new phone, or somebody that has multiple devices, where you see a brand new device, a new IDFA, but you see the same customer. It could be someone with an iPhone and an iPad, and you're used to seeing them on their iPhone, and then suddenly you see the same customer with a new device being the iPad. And then finally, we have the same customer, same device, where you see an install come in and you identify both the device, meaning you recognize a device, and you recognize the customer ID. So this is probably the most egregious or problematic of the four, which is you do not want your user acquisition team acquiring the same device and the same customer. That's just a waste of money. So anyway, those are the four cohorts that we are going to be segmenting our installs by. So let's go ahead and move over to MySQL, and I will show you how to do this. Okay, so the very first thing we want to do is I want to show you two examples of this many-to-many relationship between device and customer, because it's super important logically to understand what's going on. And again, this is very, very common in the mobile games industry and the online business industry in general, where you have this disconnect between the user acquisition team and the analytics department, where the user acquisition team is acquiring external installs and driving them to your business based on the device, whereas the analytics department or analytics team is analyzing and looking at the data based not on the device but on the customer. And there's actually a many-to-many relationship going on between the two. So it's very important as an analyst to be aware of this. So let me walk you through an example of a customer with multiple devices. So as you can see, here's an example where we have one customer with multiple devices. If we look at the customer ID column, we have the same customer ending in 543. and we have two records, meaning this same unique person has two different devices. It could be a unique person that has both an iPhone and an iPad. So that's an example of one customer having more than one device, two different devices. Okay, so now let's look at the opposite of that, which is one device with multiple customers or multiple unique users. Again, we can go back to our example of a husband and wife sharing one unique device. So if we run this example, we see the opposite, where we see the exact same device ending in 8021 having two different customer IDs, one ending in 999, the other ending in 787. So if you take both of those examples together, what that represents is a many-to-many relationship. One customer could have multiple devices, one device could have multiple customers. So let's go ahead and take this information and apply it to installs so that we get a greater understanding on whether or not your online business is truly acquiring brand new installs, or if they are acquiring installs that in one way or another are already recognized or known to your business, either via the customer ID or the device, or potentially through both of those identifiers. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and show you our installs table that we're going to be using. And it's going to be called fact player installs. Here's our database. Okay, great. So here's our installs table. And as you can see, we have the customer ID, we have the device ID, we have the install date and the install date time, along with install channels or sources. So this is fantastic. Now we're going to be using this data multiple times. We're going to be referencing and joining to this table multiple times. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're returning to the same data set multiple times through joins, aka through self joins, then the most important thing to do is to make sure that you write a query that's optimized for this. And per that reasoning, I really recommend that we take this table and we save it into a table with indexes, allowing us to join, reference, return, and retrieve data from the same data source in a more efficient way. So let's go ahead and save this data into another table. So we're going to ultimately create a new table called fact player installs indexed, right? And I wrote this statement up here so that if we run and rerun this script, that we're not going to encounter any errors. So this is saying, hey, if this table already exists, go ahead and drop it and recreate it. So we're going to do something like this: create table. And what is it that we exactly want in this table? We want the customer ID. We want the device ID. We want the install date. And we want the install date time. And we want this to be a varchar 255. And we want this to just be a date, and we want this to be a date time. Let's give ourselves a primary key, and that'll just be on the customer ID, the device ID, and then the install date time. And then let's create some indexes so that when we join back to this table, things work more efficiently. Index, we will call this index customer ID index, and that's just going to be based on the customer ID. Great. And we can just copy this twice. Device ID index, going to be based on the device ID, and then install date time index. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and put a semicolon there. Okay. So far we can basically run this statement over and over again, saying if this table exists, drop it, and then create it again here. So let's go ahead and do that. That worked. Let's run this statement here. That worked as well. So we just created a table, but guess what? There's no data in there. Let me show you that's the case. Fantastic. So we have our field names, but no data. So let's go ahead and insert some data in there. So we want to insert into this table here with these field names. We want to insert data into customer ID field, the device ID field, the install date, and the install date time. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to take the data from fact player installs and insert it into fact player installs indexed. Okay. Let's make sure we match those columns. Put a semicolon there. And let's run this statement together. Okay, great. So the records have been successfully inserted into our table. Let's take a look at them. All right, so we have our data. We have installs by their customer ID and their device ID, along with their install date time. So now we are ready to build the query that's going to support our analysis. Let's call this customers. We want the customer ID. We want the device ID. We want the date of the install date, and then the install date time. And then what we're going to do is join back to the exact same table. So this is a left join. It's also known as a self join. And we're going to call this customers historical. And we're going to join on customers.customer ID equals customers historical dot customer ID. And then what we want to do is, this is data from our first table, from this table right here. And we're interested in looking at installs that happen on the same customer ID, but happen historically in time. So in the past, that way we can see whether or not they've installed on the same or different device. Let me make sure you can see this entire query. And then we're going to add, and we want the install date time from table 2 from this table right here to be less than this install date time. Okay, so I'm going to show you what is visually happening here. So for example, we have this customer 38446, and this join is saying, hey, I want you to bring back all installs that happen on 38446 that happened prior to or previous to or historical to this install date time. And that'll allow us to check to see whether or not they've installed previously on the same device or a different device. So let's add some case statements now. And just for your no's sake, this join logic here is saying, hey, if you see the same customer with an install or multiple installs that happen less than this install date time, bring all those records across. So it could bring across no records, one record, or many records. So because of that, let's make sure that we still group by this and create a aggregate function here that has a logic we need to do this analysis. We'll say, okay, case when okay, so since we were joining on the customer ID, and since we know that join dictates that the customer ID values have to be the same, we are only interested in creating case statements that evaluate the values of the device ID. So in this situation, we're saying, hey, when the device ID from the first table and from the second table are the same, then what we're going to say is we're going to say same customer, same device. Meaning for this specific install, we've actually seen them before on the same device and with the same customer ID value. So same customer, same device. Let's turn this into an aggregate function to take care of the potentially numerous records that are coming in off of that join logic. Now, here's the magic that we're going to be adding. The exact same case statement, but we're going to put a exclamation mark here and say, hey, it could be the exact same customer ID value, but the device IDs are different, meaning we recognize this customer, but we're acknowledging that they've installed more than once on different devices, maybe an iPhone the first time, maybe an iPad the second time. So we will call the same customer new device. Let's make sure we group our data. And let's look at this one more time. So we are joining on customer ID, and we're joining where the install date time from table 2 is less than this install date time here, meaning it's only bringing across installations that happen prior to this install date time here. And then what we're doing is we're looking at the device ID. We're saying if the device ID is the same as this device ID, then we know that it's the same customer that's installing on the same device. However, if the device ID is different, then what we know is, hey, it's the same customer, but they're installing on a different or a new device. Okay, great. So let's run a few records here. Fantastic. So in the same customer new device field, we have a few examples where we have a customer that's installed on multiple and different devices, maybe an iPhone the first time, maybe an iPad the second time, whatever it is. And then same customer, same device. We don't see any examples of this, and this is great. This is an example of a good business and a good user acquisition operations, meaning they're not reacquiring the exact same person on the exact same device, because that would just be a waste of money. Okay, so let's move on to the next step together, where we're going to replicate the exact same logic, but for device rather than customer. So meaning someone has installed on the same device, but the customer ID value is either the same or different. And this goes back to the example of two unique people sharing a device, right? Two people sharing a unique device. So a husband and wife sharing a device where you recognize the device twice, but you realize the two customer IDs are different. One is the husband, who's a legacy player, and maybe the new player is the wife. Okay. We can call this devices. Let's change out the prefix here. All right, and we're going to do a left join back to the exact same table. Fact player installs indexed, right? But this time we're going to do it on devices.device ID from the first table. And call this devices historical equals the device ID from the second table. And again, we're going to do it where the install date time from the second table is less than the install date time here, so that we're only bringing across historical installs for us to evaluate versus our current record here. Okay, so let's look at our logic again. This join logic should be exactly the same as this, except we're looking or joining on device ID rather than on customer. So we're doing that. And then the device's historical install date time has to be less than the install date time here, so that we bring in only historical or past installs. And now all we need to do is just bring in this case statement logic. And this needs to be devices. This needs to be devices as well. And instead of looking at the device ID, we actually want to look at the customer ID this time. Okay, great. So let's add some column names to those case statement columns. And for this one, in this situation, we know it's always going to be the same device. And the reason why is because we're joining on device ID, right? So same device, same customer. And this is going to be same device, but if the customer ID is different, then we know same device, new customer. And that's the example of a husband and wife sharing one device or one iPad. So one iPad, same device, but a new customer, so potentially the wife. Let's do a group by. And let's run a few records now. Okay, great. So now we're ready to aggregate our data. So let's do that now. We can take all of this and wrap it into a larger subselect and call it ag. And really all we want is to do some simple aggregations here. So we want to aggregate this by the day, the install date. And then if we just do a simple count of records, this is just going to be total installs, total install volume. Okay. And then here are the additional columns or fields that we want to sum. So let's grab them and just say we want to change these prefixes here. And let's sum them. And let's make sure these fields have names. And let's group by or aggregate all of this data to the install date. So we will do a group by here. And then we don't really want installs for all of time. Let's just do it for installs over the past 30 days or the last month. So where the install date is greater than the current date, minus 1 month. Let's add a semicolon here, and we are ready to run our final query. Okay, here we go. So that was pretty lightning fast thanks to the indexes that we added in that table we created together. So let's go ahead and analyze this data in Excel. Okay, great. So here we are in Excel. We have total installs by date, and then we have it segmented or aggregated by these different cohorts. Same customer, same device, same customer, new device, same device, same customer, same device, new customer. So there's one thing that I do want to call out, which is this column here and this column here are the same thing. They should always be equal, right? Same customer, same device, same customer. So as you can see, it's zeroed out for all of our install dates, and that's fantastic. That's representative of a really, really good user acquisition team, meaning they're taking your marketing budget and they're not buying devices and customers that they both recognize. So that's good. So what we want to do is let's create some new column names that actually match the matrix or rubric that we looked at earlier in this tutorial. So it's going to be new customer, new device, same customer, new device, same device, new customer. And then we need same device, same customer. Okay, so let's go ahead and add those values that we need. So let's start with same customer, new device. So that's going to be here, same customer, new device. And then we also want to look at the same device, new customer. So same device, new customer. And then this is same device, same customer, which is going to be either column C or column E. So taking either one is fine. And then who are our brand new installs where we don't recognize neither the device or the customer ID? And that's fantastic. That means they're totally brand new to the business, which is great. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a summation. We're actually going to take these installs, minus these values right here, and whatever is left over are our brand new installs. Great. Let's change this over to date. And let me expand this a little bit just so you can see what is going on. So we're going to take our date. These are install dates, and then grab these values here and create a stacked bar chart. Okay, so let's change the font on this so we can see this a little better. Let's make this a little more visually appealing. We can call this installs. Let's capitalize this. Okay, fantastic work, everybody. So what we did, or what we're looking at, is installs over the last 30 days for this online business or mobile game. And what you can see is we segmented by whether or not we could recognize the customer ID or the device ID, or actually both or neither. And this is extremely insightful because you can see here that the brand new installs to this business are this blue segment right here. So brand new customer ID, brand new device. We don't recognize it at all. That's fantastic. And then in the orange, we see that represents a number of installs where it's the same customer on a new device. And that's something that you really can't help, right? Someone buying a brand new phone or switching from iOS to Android or having multiple devices at the same time, that's not really something that your user acquisition team or marketing team can account for. And then in the gray, we have the same device in a new customer. So that is a husband and a wife potentially sharing an iPad. So this is something that your user acquisition team can actually plan for. What you can do is you can take your installs and provide your user acquisition team all of those devices or device IDs or IDFAs so that they can be blacklisted, so they don't go out and acquire a device that we already recognize. And then in game, you can just create strategies to maybe get more customers or more people that are part of a family to create a new account using the same device. And then finally, with the yellow here, thankfully in this online business, we don't have any examples of installs with the same device and same customer. So that's really egregious and it's a huge waste of money. And you can actually account for this by similarly providing a list of devices to be blacklisted by your user acquisition team. That way you can save on your marketing budget and reinvest it in a more effective manner. I hope this tutorial has helped. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you very much.